Hello once again. We're back for the fourth and final movement of Antonín Dvořák's Ninth Symphony from the New World, as performed by the London Symphony Orchestra and conducted by István Kertész. Again, I'm not certain about that surname pronunciation. But this fourth movement is certainly the most well-known in pop culture. I've seen it used in movies and TV shows like Nota Me Cantabile, where it not only features narratively, meaning it is actually performed in the story, but it's actually used as part of the conducting competition that I've talked about once the main characters go to Europe. And in this competition, it's one of the pieces where the orchestra plays it with deliberately changed parts or with mistakes that are done intentionally for the conductor to recognize or not, and to explain why it was played incorrectly, or if it was played by an instrument that doesn't actually play it in the actual score. So it's used as a piece to show or to demonstrate how well a conductor knows the work, and thus it is not only very enjoyable just to hear at any time and in one of my favorite shows ever, but as someone who knows the symphony very well, it was very fun because there were parts where I could clearly hear that something had been altered. Now, as someone who didn't study classical music formally and who's not a conductor, I wasn't necessarily able to say exactly why or how it was misplayed, but it was fun to hear it and recognize in the moment, in real time, that something had been different in a particular passage. In any case, as I said, it's very widely known. It's the most celebrated, I think, of the four movements, and it is an Allegro con fuoco, meaning fast, with fire, with passion, and it certainly has that. Indeed, even in just the opening 10 or 15 seconds, we get one of the most memorable and intensely fiery passages in all of classical music, to my mind, and certainly to those, or in the minds of many music critics as well. So yes, it's just a very memorable and powerful movement. Let's hear it. This is the final movement of Antonín Dvořák's Ninth Symphony from the New World, as performed by the London Symphony Orchestra and conducted by István Kertész, and it is an Allegro con fuoco. Stunning. Absolutely stunning. The sections, the chronology, the power, the sweetness, and again, the Dvořák violin writing, the emotional singing that the violins and strings more generally do in his compositions comes through loud and clear and emotively in this movement. But of course, that big towering crescendo that comes around multiple times, as well as in iterations that are more subtle or deeper or even more mellow, is the real standout melodic theme of this movement. But just the dynamic nature of this movement and the symphony more broadly is one of its defining features. And as I said, I think it's another composition which suggests that, to my mind, and to at least some others, Dvořák should absolutely be in the conversation for one of the best composers ever. And this fourth movement just puts a perfect capstone on this incredible symphony. So, yes, ultimately, I love every moment of the symphony. It was really impactful to go through with you all, as well as all of these Classical Days reactions. We're moving toward the end of the final day, the Classical Days finale. I hope you're enjoying the journey, and I'll be back in a moment for the next piece. I will see you then.
Peace.